What is up, everybody, and welcome into the All NBA podcast, part of the ALLCITY podcast network. I'm your host, Adam Mares. My goodness, do we have some headlines to get to today? We don't always get usually it's just games. We talk about the games, but in our 48 hours off, there have been some headlines. We've got scandals, hiding the game ball, pettiness in the NBA. I can't wait to talk about that, both funny and ridiculous. We're going to talk about the Suns finally making their debut of their new team, going up against some of the guys from their old team. A lot to talk about there. And then, of course, Draymond Green's suspension. Let's get into it. Joining me live from Disney World, it is Tim Legler.
That's right. The great Orlando, Florida, man. That's right. Taking some time for you, though. And I tell you what, you hit on a wild day of storylines. There's nothing better for a script for your show than a Wednesday night in the NBA, right? It writes itself. And we certainly had our share. And I think, Giannis, what he did, obviously we're going to get into, record-breaking night. But I'll tell you what, man, this other storyline maybe not as positive, but it's something that's got to be talked about, what's going on with Draymond Green.
No question about it. We're going to get you into all of it. But first, got to let you know we are presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code ALLNBA, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. So we're actually not going to start last night. We're going to start 2 nights ago, where the Golden State Warriors are taking on the Phoenix Suns, a big game for both teams, an important one when you talk about where those teams are in the standings and just trying to get good wins under their belt. Draymond Green, kind of wrestling for position with Jusuf Nurkić, tries to sell the call legs. He just tries to sell it. He just flails his arms when he sells calls, he just flails. And so he flails a little bit. Perfect spinning punch right to the jaw to Jusuf Nurkić, catches him right on the chin. Nurkić, folds like a towel. That's the incident. I mean, let's just start here. When you watch this incident, I mean, I know what Draymond says, but to me, it looked like a pretty good hook.
Well, listen, he's selling. I ain't buying. That's all I can tell you right now. I'm not interested. I'm not making a bid on that. Because that's one of the most ridiculous excuses I've ever heard. That was absolutely 100% intentional. Now, did he intentionally maybe mean to hit him in the neck area? I don't know. Maybe he swings around. Maybe he can catch him in his shoulder. Nurkić is a big dude. Maybe he hits him in the shoulder. To try to convince anyone, I don't even think people in his own house would believe that excuse, because he's just, first of all, let's just go back to the setup here. He's basically sort of jostling in the post. It ended up not even being the post. He was pushed out so far, he was practically on the sideline. So now you're 15, 16 feet from the basket. Nurkić is behind him. They're kind of wrestling a little bit in the post. I didn't even think the contact that Nurkić put into his back was even that significant.
That was regular post position, right? That's just regular jostling for position.
Nothing about that, I thought, crossed any sort of line where you're going to retaliate in any way. But certainly, if you're trying to sell that call, the way you would do that would be one of two things. You either are going to chop the hand to get it, to basically let the ref know, get this guy's hand off me. Or if you're trying to sell the fact that he bumped into your back with that level of force, you're going to go forward, and you're just going to, your whole body, you're probably going to go down on your chest. We see guys who do it all the time in the post. They get hit. They're trying to get a call. They'll just flop down face first. Sometimes they get the call. Sometimes they won't. But to spin around 180 degrees with your arm fully extended out to the side as if you're going to throw a punch, and then make contact with someone coming around with that kind of velocity in their head and neck area, there's absolutely, it's so implausible what he was saying and to what he was doing. And by the way, there's one last component here. Nobody's more in tune with their body movements and coordination and intent and leverage than a professional athlete. So it's not like he was out of control of his own body. Okay. He swung around, he intended to hit him, and he did. And it's coming on the heels of a 5-game suspension in which he basically ran 30 feet to get his Rudy Gobert in a chokehold and then drag him 25, 30 feet away and refuse to let go, even though there's several people imploring him to. So coming on the heels of that, and listen, remember the league said when he got suspended 5 games for that, I thought that was light. They said we're taking past actions into account. Well, I got news for you. You take past actions into account to give him 5 games for that, when now you're only a few weeks later. Well, guess what? Now you got to take that into account when you look at this. And I think this is significantly worse than what he did to Gobert, significantly. So here you go. I'm trying to figure out when this came down at him what the number of games was going to be. I thought 25, and now they've gone with the word indefinite, which is really vague for all of us because that could be any number of games from 1 to the rest of the season. So we're all going to sit here and wait and see what's going to happen, and is he going to get the help that he says he's going to get, that the league is telling him he needs to get, the Warriors are telling him he needs to get. No one is saying what kind of help, but does he have anger management problems? Does he have some sort of stressor going on in his personal life that he needs to deal with that's carrying over to the court? I guess he's going to have to get in tune with all of those things. We don't know. We just know that we're not going to see Draymond Green for a while, but we just have absolutely no idea how long it's going to be until we see him and what is the impact going to be on the Golden State Warriors in the meantime.
And this is, you brought up the important thing here, which is he was just suspended. It wasn't that long ago, a couple weeks. Right. You think like, okay, 5 games. And by the way, you're right that we both thought it was going to be longer than 5 games, given that it was a 15-second chokehold. This wasn't like a push or something like that. This was a very intentional, deliberate, and excessive thing. And he got 5 games, but that's still a big enough time that you think, okay, you should probably be reflective on this. 2 weeks later, and here we are in the second one. And it's like, all right, no lessons are being learned here. No pressure has really been applied in a way that's going to make a meaningful impact. And just to put a fine point on it, this punch to me, it was the type where he 100% was trying to punch him. He probably wasn't trying to punch him as hard as he did. That happens sometimes. Like, I'm going to try to hit you in a way that makes it look accidental and not enough contact. But unfortunately, he caught him right on the jaw, collapsed him. And it was like, oh, damn, I hit him way harder than I expected or intended to because I'm completely out of control. But now let's move to the fallout of this, because the Warriors are 10-13 on the season. They have had a pretty disastrous start to their season with Klay Thompson. Andrew Wiggins look like a shell of themselves. You haven't seen the leap. We've talked about the Warriors earlier in the season. Nothing's really changed. Kuminga, Moody, haven't quite made the leap that you need if you're trying to like, hey, we've got reinforcements on the way. You've had some health luck, some bad injury luck with some guys. Now, Draymond Green has missed to date, let me see here, 7 games. They are 8 games. They are 3-5 in the games that he misses. Indefinite to me, I hate this penalty because the league could sort of like wiggle out of this. It could be 5 games. It could be 25 games. We don't know. I expect it'll be more, not less. But when I look at this, I go, the Warriors can't really afford 3-5, a 3-5 win rate over the next 20 games. They do that, they're going to go the way of the Memphis Grizzlies, another team that has lost a guy. They'll go 6-17 over that stretch, and they'll be out of the playoffs for good. So do you view this and say, hey, I don't know that the Warriors are going to survive this stretch?
Yeah, definitely. Because again, if the league is going to treat this as they're saying, which is, we need Draymond Green to step away from everything and go get a handle on all of this, and that's going to take some time. You and I both know any person for any reason, and look, I think every person probably could use a therapist. I think they're just good in general, right? To be able to go talk to someone and get stuff off your chest. If you're going to some sort of counseling, which it sounds like he's going to be doing, that's not the kind of thing you pop in a couple sessions and you're good.
Right.
That takes time to be able to do that. So I think, I think that the league is going to force, I know that they probably would love to have the Golden State Warriors or Steph Curry, relevant and in the Western Conference and in the playoffs. But at the same time, I think they're so tired of all of this and the distraction this is and this whole act that they're going to, come down hard. So I think you're right. He's going to be out for an extended period of time. You know what their record is when he doesn't play. Here's the problem, Adam. It's not just the fact that Draymond is stepping away and he's their primary decision maker offensively. He's obviously one of the greatest defensive players we've ever seen. So the impact there is one thing. You take that out of the mix. When you combine that with what's going on with Klay Thompson, what's going on with Andrew Wiggins, I mean, these are two guys that have not come close to finding their games offensively. The timing of Draymond Green being removed from the team for an extended period of time could not be worse based on the way those guys are playing. And you can't replace what Draymond does. And now you got a team that's struggling offensively that you say, okay, well, defensively, we need to be pretty good right now while we're trying to figure out what's going on with Klay and Andrew Wiggins and getting them going. Well, now you just got significantly worse defensively. So you're right. I don't know how you avoid, just a bunch of losses piling up right now for this team. Steph Curry, as great as he's been, we clearly can see that's not enough anymore for the Warriors. They need these other guys to find their games. And now that we're going on, past a quarter point of the season, you start to wonder, like, is this more than just guys in a shooting slump? This starts to become like, what's going on? Like, what are they feeling on the court? What do they feel like physically? Have they lost confidence? Like, what's happening? I mean, Steve Kerr even, basically took them off the floor at an important time, and he's really rarely ever done that with these star players. And Klay was very affected by that, not being out there to kind of close the game. Steve Kerr didn't have a choice. He'd seen enough too. At some point, you got to go in a different direction to try to get a jolt to your offense. So you add it all up. Deep, deep trouble for the Warriors. Deep trouble, as we know how good the West is, how loaded it is. At best, they're going to be fighting. It looks like, when this is all over with, fighting to get into the 10 spot. Like, can we at least get into the play-in and see if we can make magic happen with, maybe by that time Klay's found his game, Steph is Steph, and maybe you have a fighter's chance with those guys. I don't know, but it's going to be rough sledding here for a while.
But as much as you say all of those things, I just look at it and go, but how? Because even if Klay and Andrew Wiggins get going in, this is not a good team without Draymond Green. They weren't a good team with him, but they weren't a good team without Draymond Green now, because I don't buy that you can even buy an acceptable you can get a passable defense without him in there. Is there a player that you look at and say, or a style, you say, okay, now it's this guy's time to step up. It's going to change the way they look. Like, what is the path forward for them? If we say he's out 20 games, let's just say 20 because it's a round number. If he's out for 20 games, how do they survive it? Who steps up and what do they look like in surviving that?
I don't know that they do survive it. I think 500 would be impossible to achieve during that time. You mentioned, their record without him. If they played a 375 clip winning percentage, just look what that's going to look like. Let's say it's three of those stretches. It's 24 games. Let's just say, right? You go 9-15. You're looking at 19 and 28 at that point. Like, how do you come back from that with 35 games to go? And again, here's the other thing: Klay and Wiggins struggling. And Klay, I think it is accumulation of injuries, right? And just whatever reason, I don't think he feels the same physically when he's on the court. Wiggins, I'm not sure what's going on with him. But again, they have their own struggles right now. But guess what? Draymond Green and him not being on the court, that affects them offensively. Both of those guys.
Yeah.
Draymond Green is the brains of the operation offensively. He makes the most reads. He's the guy that delivers the ball. He runs all the dribble handoffs. He's a great screen setter. He gets the ball off the glass and goes and hits guys in transition for open shots. You take all that off the floor, it's going to be even harder for Klay Thompson and Andrew Wiggins to get going and find clean looks and find their offense. So to answer your question, there's nobody on their roster. You look at, the most obvious answer is always Kuminga. Like, I feel like no matter what comes up, Kuminga's going to have to be better. At this point, you go, is he capable of it? He has nights where he's really, really good, and he's obviously their best athlete, and he makes a splash, right? But then it'll be 2 or 3 games of below average, and they lose faith in him, and his minutes get shortened. I haven't seen a consistent stretch out of Jonathan Kuminga yet to think that he can now step into a role where he's playing 30 minutes a night if Draymond Green's not there and
he's playing 20.
super
He's playing 20 right now. He's not, like, the idea of him playing 33 minutes a night. His high this year, Legs, is 30 minutes or 29 minutes. He hasn't played 30 minutes this year, let alone 30 minutes per night.
No, it's a great point. And he's one of those guys that you don't even know if, like, some players, you play him 20 minutes and you get X production. You play him 30 minutes, you get the same exact production. Like, there are players that are like that, right? It's just almost like an additional wasted minutes. He has not shown yet that breakthrough where you know what you're getting consistently. Moses Moody is another guy who's going to get some of these minutes. If Saric is going to play more, what does that all add up to, though, for the Warriors? You know, they're a mess, man. They're a mess. This is just, to me, the culmination of what has been just an absolute train wreck of a season to this point. Combination injuries and guys not playing well. You know, Chris Paul, they brought him in there to do certain things. You know, and look, he doesn't turn the ball over, but their turnovers on some nights are just as bad as it's been before as a team. And he's not giving you really offensive punch. I don't think he's capable of that anymore at this stage of his career. So it's just, man, it couldn't have happened at a worse time for the Warriors. And that's the one thing I wanted. My final thought on this with Draymond. This is what gets me so frustrated about this situation for the Warriors. When you do something like that, you're Draymond Green, there is no other word for it other than selfish. That's the only word you can use for it, because that is you in the moment reacting to your emotions only. No regard for your teammates, no regard for your coaching staff, no regard for the organization. I'm going to do what I want to do. And everybody's just going to have to live with the repercussions of that. And his inability to have a break, put an emotional break on his actions in the moment, because of the accountability to those people. Right. As a player, I can just tell you, that's really all I cared about. Wasn't playing for like my family, the fans, you know, my coaches. I was playing because I had accountability to my teammates, to be there, to hopefully play well, to had a responsibility on both ends of the floor, to do what I was supposed to do my job. And I did not want to let those guys down. And so when you act out like that and you cost your team the number of times that he has done this, selfish is the only word that I come up with. And particularly when they're struggling, man, trying to keep their head above water, they need you. You're that important. And now you're not going to be there for an extended period of time.
And look, he has 4 championships. In my opinion, I saw some people in the chat, and you always see this comment of like, he's never been as good as people say. Like, I hate this part of it because I think Draymond is the best defender of a generation. I think he's an incredible player, he changed the game and all these different things. And he's a huge part of why the Warriors were as good as they were. He also cost him a championship, you know, like, hey, let's not kid ourselves. The 3-1 collapse doesn't happen if he doesn't. But the same thing, by the way, that one was the same thing. The kicking, you know, it was out of control that year. And it was one of those things where he's trying to like lightly kick, and then he ends up accidentally kicking a couple people too hard, getting too many techs. And it's like, yeah, you're doing the same thing, man. You're towing the line every second you're on the court. But here's what I want to close with for me. The last suspension, the last one a couple weeks ago, this was his quote coming out of it. He says, I think the consensus amongst all of us is I'm going to be me no matter what, and that's not going to change. He had another quote that says, I want to play basketball the way I play basketball. The way I play has gotten me here. The way I play basketball has brought me a tremendous amount of success, individual and from a team standpoint. So I'm going to always be myself, and there's no changing that.
There you go.
I hate this sentiment because there is something to like, you got to be yourself. You have to, you know, self-acceptance of who you are, and the emotional, crazy way he plays makes him great, but also comes with this residual side effects that are negative. That's one way of looking at it. The other way is you can grow. You don't have to be content with the person you are. You could try to improve upon the person you are. And when I hear those quotes, I just know enough people in my life who say things like that. Well, me doing this bad thing, I've gotten where I'm at doing that, so I'm not going to change. It's like, yeah, not because of that. In spite of that, you could grow as a person, and that should be your goal at all things. It's just here's a flaw or a weakness I have. Let's try to erase that over time. He looked at it the other way.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, man. And this is like, you know, I love this because we're getting into a little bit of, personal therapy here for people that are watching this show. You're 100% right. There's nothing, but listen, these are prideful people. And it's hard to admit it. Even last night, for him to say after the game, that was unintentional. And then to say, they talk about him not being there potentially. And he said something to the effect of, well, I would feel bad about that if, like I said, I intentionally did it and I cost my team that way. But it's just like that level of not getting it Like, that's scary for the Warriors. And look, it's not all, by the way, Draymond's fault, man. Like some of this stuff should have been dealt with from the organization standpoint along the way. I've said it repeatedly. Like, just look, the guy punched a teammate before the season started. I saw fights. I saw fights in practice when I played in the NBA. Okay. I don't think I ever saw someone just completely sucker punch someone like that when you're just kind of standing there in a relaxed state. Even when a guy was walking up to you, you don't expect someone to go that far as a teammate. I saw guys get into it on the court in practice. I saw a fight in the locker room, an epic fight in the locker room one time after a game. Tables got tipped over in a whole bit. Saw all of that stuff. But if you think about the stuff that's gone on with him and just his emotions on a nightly basis, the way he deals with officials, and all that. And he just says, well, this is me. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't like that. Well, there's probably some truth in that with your intensity, right? That's really what he's saying. And that edge you have to play with, probably, because he's not the most talented guy in the world. He's not the most athletic. He got to the league and had this level of success for other reasons. That's a big part of it. I get that. But when you have crossed the line this many times to hurt your team to this extent, yeah, man, it's time to look in the mirror and it's time to change and come back changed. Because you know what? It'll help you actually in your life in other ways that you don't even see right now that'll probably make you more fulfilled on a daily basis if you can get control of this. Because right now, there's a massive disappointment. You know what stood out to me, Adam, by the way, about
What's
this?
that?
Look at the replay. Again, I guarantee you probably haven't looked at something. There's probably something you haven't noticed because I've seen it 20 times. Okay. Yeah. He turns, he swings, he connects. Look at the reaction of his bench. He is 5 feet away from his entire team and the coaching staff. One player goes like this, kind of, I don't even know who it was. I couldn't quite tell. Puts his hands in the air, and the gesture was clearly, oh my God, Dre, what are you doing? Nobody else moved a muscle. And the reason I say that, if a player gets into that with somebody on your team that's right in front of your bench, you're probably going to stand up because you think it's like, hey, man, like my guy's getting into it with somebody. Nobody moved. That is the level of fatigue that this organization feels with these type of incidents. They're that worn out by it. And whether they admit it publicly or not, they're going to protect their guy. Coaches protect players. Teammates protect teammates. What they say verbally, let's put a microphone inside Steph Curry's car, Steve Kerr's car on the way home from that game, that on the way back to the hotel. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that. What's really going through their heads, because that, to me, told me a lot. The reaction was just literally nothing. Like, we're numb to this at this point. Like, are you kidding me? Steve Kerr knew in the moment this is going to cost him a ton, and it's going to cost our team. He knew that. He processed that within a nanosecond, what that was about to do to their team. And the reaction is just numbness.
I think we're going to look back at the punch on Jordan Poole. This is 3 punches ago, by the way. We're going to look at that as the last moment of the Warriors dynasty. I just think it ended there, and the rest of this has been playing out the string. If he's gone for 20 games the way you suggest, maybe more, there's just no way. This season's over for the Warriors. And it's a shame because Steph Curry is still – in his prime, or at least playing like it, shooting over 42% from 3 this year on insane volume, as high a volume as he's ever taken. And it's a shame for that's going to be wasted. We got to move on, though. By the way, television deal. This is a huge playoffs for the television deal. Like, the NBA is trying to inflate their numbers. They're trying to say, hey, look, we're as popular as ever. Your numbers, if the Warriors do not make the playoffs, your numbers will be worse than you are hoping for. No matter what happens, the Warriors drag numbers up. Steph Curry is the number 1 player to see in the playoffs. And if the Warriors miss, that's huge for an NBA that is hoping to get a new rights deal. But let's take a break. There's other great stories in the NBA. The big 3 for the Phoenix Suns finally made their debut. All it took was 2 months of the season. But they finally made their debut last night. And was it disappointing? We'll talk about that. But first, in the NBA, the game can change in an instant. But no matter how the action unfolds, DraftKings Sportsbook has your back. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5 on basketball. Win or lose, you get an instant dub. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code ALLNBA. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code ALLNBA. The crown is yours. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In West Virginia, Visit www.1800gambler.net. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, must be 21 or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gaming resources. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/basketball terms. All right, last night the Phoenix Suns made their debut with their big three finally, and they went up against familiar faces, the old guys. Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges were in town with the Brooklyn Nets, and they stole the show. They get the win. Both guys played really well. Mikal Bridges for 21 points. Cam Johnson for 15 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. The big three, though, they go down. What stood out to you in this game as you got your first look at them?
I think the first thing that stood out to me was just how long they have to go, how far away they are from being, a well-oiled machine offensively. I just think, and as to be expected, you are talking about 3 guys that, although they can be efficient in what they do as scorers, they are all just completely used to being the alpha. And having everything run through them. And sometimes that means you pound it a little bit. Sometimes it means you're kind of looking for yourself. That's what elite level scorers do in this league. That's their job. And now to have, these bits and pieces of a couple guys out there on some nights, one of them some nights, 3 of them hardly at all. And then we finally get to see it last night. I didn't notice Bradley Beal, really. And look, he's just starting, so I get it. But he played 34 minutes, and he was 6 for 9. So he actually shot well, right? So, he's like – he's efficient. So the question begs, how is a guy on that level that is plays 34 minutes take 9 shots when he's 6 for 9? You know what I mean? And that's where they're going to have to iron this out, because it's the old cliche about, hey, there's only one basketball. No, well, I believe that doesn't matter. I think it can work, but they're so far from getting to that level of where there's a flow to it and a rhythm and an ebb. Because to me, it's all about deference. And that's something that guys on this level, it's a very difficult thing for them to figure out when it's just them and they're the top of the food chain. There is no such thing as deference. It's attack, attack, attack. Every single chance I get it, I can go. And if I don't have a shot, I hit too much traffic, I get doubled up, whatever, I'll give it up. But the next time up the floor, it's going to be me first, because that's my job. When you have 3 guys like that, now you start to look around and you do wonder, like, you're thinking, and they're not used to thinking. They're just used to going and reacting and playing and attacking. And now there's going to be some thinking involved in this. And that means you're going to have some stretches of games where they don't necessarily click or settle matters, late the way they have to. I thought the Nets were significantly better down the stretch. They looked organized. They had a plan, a purpose. They ran good stuff. Dinwiddie had the ball in his hands most of the time because he's their point guard. He was going to set the table. He made a couple big shots, big free throws late. And for the Suns, it was very much felt disjointed. So that's, I think, the number one takeaway in watching the game was just, okay, yeah, this could be something, man. There's so much firepower, but, man, do they have a long way to go to look like a team, like they're going to have to beat the teams that we're talking about to end up winning it all. And that should be their goal.
The stretch – to me, what stood out to me in this game is, the big three together, they looked a little clunky, as to be expected. I thought as the game went on, they got more comfortable, made a lot of shots, and you could see the vision of, okay, this is going to be hard to scramble against with that much firepower.
Right.
But the moments that stood out to me was every second that Booker was not on the court, which, by the way, was only 8 minutes. They get outscored by 20 points in the 8 minutes he was not there, in part because, in my opinion, Devin Booker's their best player. But he's also the one that stirs the pot. He's the point guard on this team, and he gets the ball where it's supposed to go. When he was off, including at the end of the first, start of the second, end of the third, start of the fourth, that's where his rest came in. And in those minutes, you had both Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal on for a good portion of that and got murdered. And this is the thing I look at is when you look there, you go, okay, the big three is great, but what are the staggered minutes? One of the things we kept saying was, yeah, but you're always going to have 2 of those guys on the court at any given moment. Well, they did have 2 of them, Beal and Kevin Durant, but no point guard to really get them going, to really orchestrate. And it felt like it. And those lineups got murdered. Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal on the court together and you get murdered. That's a surprise to me.
And look, by the way, they didn't have two on the court at all times, which I sit there and it's
Right.
simple math, Adam. It's math. Let's sit
Right.
down and give me a flow chart. Give me a flow chart and let me lay this out for you because you should never be caught with less than
Right.
two of them. There's no
Right.
reason to. And yet they went a stretch in the second half with one of them on the court. I think it was Booker. And I'm going, how is this possible? With four basically kind of non-scoring role players
You're
and
right.
one scorer. They did, and
Yeah.
it's just like
Yep.
that's inexcusable. That can't happen. So look, the Suns, we knew it was going to be this way. Total work in progress. You make a good point about Booker as the playmaker because that's what he is. Look at the five guys that play off the bench for the Suns. None of those guys fill that role. You don't even have
Right.
like a TJ McConnell type guy that's just like a
Right.
point guard that's only going to distribute and play some pressure defense. They don't have that. They have wings and one guard and Goodwin. That's all they have. Nobody really is a pure point guard. No one's a playmaker. And I think their thinking is, well, Durant, Booker, and Beal can all initiate offense. We can run everything through them. Yeah, but
That's
they're more
different.
comfortable. They're more comfortable running that stuff for themselves. Like
Right.
that's what they're at their best. They can all pass out of double teams and out of traffic, but their thought process is to go and to score. Booker at least has a little bit of that in him where he kind of anticipates turning the corner and a reaction leading to a pass. That's the way point guards think, and Booker has some of that in him, but Durant and Beal don't really have that in them. And so this is going to be definitely something we're going to have to look at over time. And you're not making a judgment after one game, but
Sure.
the Nets, as expected, looked a lot more comfortable in a dicey game that was going to be decided late. They looked more comfortable in what they were trying to get accomplished. The Suns looked a little bit more haphazard.
And they didn't have Gordon, who's like, he's not a point guard, but another guy that in theory can handle the ball or bring it up. So maybe, again, they're mostly at full strength, but there is even a little bit more to go. But here's the big question. It took 2 months for them to get on the court together.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of the Brooklyn years where it was like, all right, once this big three gets healthy and they get some reps, they're going to really take off. I mean, if you look at the Clippers, those guys have been healthy and playing and they're getting a momentum. It's like, okay, there's the formula. But in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, it never came. They never were healthy at the same time. So
Yeah.
how many games do you think, what's the minimum number of games that you think the big three needs to play this year for you to say, okay, that's how long it's going to take for them to kind of reach whatever peak they can reach?
I'll give it an even more specific context because I think the number of games could be misleading. Because what if I said, 40 games? Well, I don't know. What if they get 20 of those games before the All-Star break?
Yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So for me, it's more about how much do they get together uninterrupted going into the playoffs. That's what I would like to see. And I'd like to see a 15 to 20 game stretch heading into April where they have been out there together. Rotations are figured out. The deference
Right.
issue, which I think is a big one, is figured out. Even putting LeBron James, Dwayne Wade together, that was 8 and 9, to start out because
Right.
it was almost like they were being too kind to each other in letting the other one lead, right? And so they had some growing pains. They finally clicked, and then what the rest is history, man. 4 straight finals and 2 championships. So this team, I think there's going to be an absolute feeling out. There's going to be nights where they don't even. I guarantee you, last night, Bradley Beal did not feel comfortable. Like this
Right.
is straight
Yeah.
9 shots in 34 minutes. How's that
Right.
comfortable to Bradley Beal? He's never played that way. You got to go back to his rookie year. Probably he wasn't even getting numbers like that. 9 shots in 34 minutes. So, and that awkwardness is something that takes time to sort out. So I would say the answer to your question is less than the total number of games for the season. Give me a stretch after the All-Star break of 20 games uninterrupted where these guys are healthy and playing together every night. That's what I'd like to see.
The other thing that happens in the course of a season is you kind of see, okay, this is where a team's strengths and weaknesses are. For example, last night they went up against the Brooklyn Nets, who start Nick Claxton at center. I mean, he's a skinny, switchy guy. They have Day'Ron Sharpe there, played 8 minutes. But they didn't. One of my fears about them is, do they have front court depth? Can they handle the bigger players in the Western Conference? And again, 15 games, 20 games, that tells you a lot, but you also just want to see different matches. How do they look against Minnesota? How do they look against the Lakers in Denver? Different types of teams. What do they look like there? So to me, watching them play last night, it's clear that this is not a natural just plug and play. There's going to be some tinkering that goes on with them, that they're going to have to figure out who they are, and guys are going to have to step into different roles. And they're just going to have to get a big enough sample size. So obviously the talent is there,
Yep.
but they lose to a Brooklyn Nets team last night. That is, I think, good. With Brooklyn, we talked about this. Brooklyn Nets are good, and they played inspired last night, I thought. But by no means is that an exciting first start. If we go to the other side, is there anything that stood out to you about Brooklyn? I mean, we've talked about this. We love watching Brooklyn. I loved watching them last night. I thought it was a really fun game, and there were some big-time performances, including our favorite bucket taker in the NBA, Cam Thomas.
My goodness, man. You never get cheated watching Cam Thomas. That dude is he's just a killer. He's got one thing on his mind. He does it exceptionally well. And it's funny because he, prior to this year, now he's in the starting lineup. I mean, it seemed like they were so reluctant to embrace what this guy was doing. Like, even when he was going through that scoring splurge last year, where he had some 40-point games, like a bunch of them in a short period of time. And then when things settled in, like, okay, you're back on the bench, and some nights we don't even need you necessarily. And I'm going, this dude's getting 40 in an NBA game, and you don't have a need for him. But now I think he's finally solidified himself, and they're just looking at him, which is what good coaches do. And you don't focus on what they can't do. You focus on what this guy does. And what he does is score at an elite level. Here's what I like about the Nets, I think most of all. They just look like a team that's got great camaraderie and chemistry.
Yeah.
Right?
Good vibe.
They get along well. It seems like they're all pulling in the same direction. And there might be some shortcomings on their roster overall. But they're 13-10, right? And they're going to probably finish. I think they have a pretty good chance of finishing, anywhere from 6 to 10 games over 500. And if that's the case, man, you're pretty relevant in the Eastern Conference without necessarily a star-studded roster because of the way they play. And they've got great role acceptance, great role definition, and they clearly understand the pecking order of the food chain on this team, starting with Mikal Bridges. But even the way he goes about it, he's a very, very selfless guy, and he gets his pretty efficiently. And he's not a guy that's going to, I think ever, upset his teammates because of the way he's playing offensively. So I just like watching him. I think that Jacques Vaughn's done a good job of getting them all together on the same page. And you're going to have to play well to beat them. I don't think they're going to beat themselves most nights.
Let's move on now. Legs, you don't know this about me, but I can be a little bit of a hater sometimes. Not all the time, but a little bit. With things that bug me, I just become a hater. I go all the way. Okay. Last night we had 4 players go for 40, and 1 go for 64. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 20 of 28 from the field, 24 of 32 from the foul line, but he goes for 64, completely dominates the matchup with the Pacers. Pacers, of course, last week knocked him out of the in-season tournament in the semis. They get their revenge tonight. Giannis goes for 64. And my only note on this one, and it's a little petty, he checked back into the game with up like 12 points or something with 2 minutes to go with 58 points. Now, I only say that to set the table for 58's a great game. I imagine it's hard when you're at 58 with a couple minutes left to not want to go for 60 just because it's a round number. But he comes back in the game and gets up to 64. I don't know if that's what triggered all of this, but the Indiana Pacers then decided, on the road, by the way, in Milwaukee, you're going to do that? We're going to take the game ball. We're going to go run with the game ball now and try to hide it and take it away. And it created one of the funniest, most pettiest, to me, we're going to disagree on this, I could tell just from our text, to me, the funniest little petty, stupid incidents that I absolutely loved and continue to love as new details come out of this ridiculous, like the Pacers acting ridiculous, but I love it. Stealing the game ball from Giannis's career high 64. What did you make of this whole fiasco, and what do you make of the 64-point performance in general?
Okay, first I want to touch on, you talk about Giannis checking back into the game, right? So I lived through this. I lived through this exact situation. As a rookie in Phoenix, Tom Chambers was on the team. The scoring record, I believe, was 56 points for the Phoenix Suns, franchise record, set by Paul Westphal, who was sitting on the bench as an assistant coach. So Tom Chambers lights up Seattle this particular night. Sean Kemp was on that team, very young Sean Kemp. I mean, Tom Chambers was amazing in his prime. And he gets to 54. He's basically tied him. And he's out of the game. And Paul Westphal actually goes to Cotton Fitzsimmons, the head coach, and says, hey, put Tom back in, man. He's got a chance to break my record. It's a very cool thing to do. He encouraged the whole thing. Sure enough, there goes Tom Chambers back into the game. And I think it was probably the way he was playing that night, 3 trips, 3 buckets, 60, comes out of the game, right? I'm a rookie on this team, like watching this incredible performance. Like, he was unstoppable. So I kind of lived through that. And look, honestly don't have as much of a problem with a team doing that when a guy's going for some kind of scoring record. Like, this is franchise history, and you're right there, and you didn't have an answer for this dude all night. Yeah. I don't have a problem necessarily with doing that. Now, what happened at the end of the game with this whole thing with the ball and taking the ball and Giannis losing his mind over it, man, just running down the tunnel, and then you don't know where. I'm like, if Giannis Antetokounmpo is that mad, he gets his hands on somebody, it's going to be a problem. And then, of course, the Pacers come out and says, misunderstanding. There's a rookie that's got his first basket, and he got the ball, and it's just nonsense. Yeah. They were clearly irritated by how bad they got gutted by this guy. They were embarrassed, and they were embarrassed by the fact he checked back in, that ruffled their feathers, and he got the scoring record against them. And now they're going to try to somehow take away from that by taking the ball, which is obviously going to mean a lot to him. Right. And the whole thing kind of just absolutely just went off the rails at the end of this game. And it's kind of unfortunate because it distracts away from what Giannis Antetokounmpo just did to this team. Yeah. I mean, you think about it. And look, by the way, this is 156 points in the paint that the Pacers just gave up in 2 games. They gave up 80 to the Lakers, I think 76 against the Bucks, right? And neither of those teams shot a lot of threes, and the Bucks particularly take a ton. They didn't take very many in this game. And I guess they figured out this is the formula to beat the Pacers. Like, just attack, get to the glass, get to the rim. They don't have much in there to stop you. And that's what Giannis's intent was the entire night. And he has this record. And by the way, don't you think probably apropos, Giannis Antetokounmpo has the scoring record for that franchise, and now he has it.
Yeah, right? It was Michael Redd before this.
Should be right. And now he's got it. So that's my take.
So I agree on everything. This is the thing, is I actually agree with both sides. I like Giannis. You can go for the points, but you have to understand that could piss off your opponent, just like anything, running up a score or anything. Like, you have a right to do it, and I encourage it, but just know that they're going to be upset about it. And then I love the petty. I just love this idea of, like, that ball would be really nice to own going for your career high. But since we're pissed, and here's the thing, afterwards, Giannis was given a ball. Was it the ball? Will we ever know this, Legs? Is there any way to know if the ball that he now has in his possession is the one they played with? And this part to me is so funny. And afterwards, by the way, Giannis had a hilarious quote where he says, he says something like, I don't know if it's the game ball. It doesn't feel like the game ball to me, which I just love. Like, I don't know if you can tell. Like,
I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. I swear this is true. And I was a shooter, so I had a special connection with the basketball, right? Like,
I love this. You're on Giannis' side. You can feel it. I'm telling
you right now. If I played a 48-minute game, I just played for 2.5 hours. I played 48-minute game. And I touched it a bunch of times, and I've had my normal night, whatever. And then you blindfolded me, and you put 3 basketballs in front of me and asked me to pick out the one I just played with. I'm telling you right now, I'm picking the right ball.
Man,
I'm telling you, I could.
This is true.
I'm telling you. Listen. I'm telling you, man. I even when I was playing in the CBA, which is now the G League, for people who don't know what that is. I spent some time there when I was trying to get to the league. And I led that league. I led the CBA in scoring. So I was putting up numbers, man. So I was like, I had a greenest of green lights. So every game at home, somebody from the home team picks out the ball you're going to use. So I was the guy. I was like, no, I'm picking out this ball, because for me, if you looked over there at me, like at the rack of balls or the basket, it would look like a person. Maybe it was in the produce section picking out like a grapefruit. It's like it had to have the right feel. You sniffed it a little bit. You kind of squeeze it, right? And it's like, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to get the perfect, because they don't all feel the same, Adam. I'm telling you, I hear what Giannis is saying, and I completely agree with him.
This is unbelievable. Yesterday we talked about the Mamba mentality and some of it's performative and creating an aura. I think this is too. Like, I'm not saying you don't believe it. I know you believe it. I could tell you believe this, but I don't know, man.
I believe it with all my heart. By the way, you said a phrase that in general, do not agree with. And like another one, we talk about some of these things I can't stand, like fear and like that. Here's one you just said. You said running up the score. I don't think there is such a thing in professional sports. I don't think there is.
Ooh.
I never even consider. In fact, someone has to tell me, where did we come up with this new thing that's taken place in the last few years in the league? You're up, let's say, 10, 12 points, okay? And there is 36 seconds left in the game, and we have the ball and we're leading, and I bring the ball up the court. Of course, the other team is sort of backed up over half court, and they're conceding the game. But we still technically have to shoot the ball to not get a shot clock violation.
Yeah.
Who came up with this notion of dribbling the clock? Is there anything more emasculating to a team, a professional basketball team, than to say, you know what, man, we feel really bad. We scored 118. We don't want to take it to 120. So we're just going to take this violation. We're going to go outside the rules of basketball and take a violation, go against the norm, so we don't potentially score more points and hurt your feelings out of respect for you. The whole thing's a crock because you're playing within the rules. Look, that's different, by the way, than, let's say, a football team that's up 4 touchdowns with 4 minutes to go, and they get the ball and they could just run it, 3 times.
Right. Yeah, possessional.
And instead you're dropping back, trying to throw bombs to score more points. That's a little bit different. You're going outside like what's normal. Yeah. To come down and run your offense and take a shot is normal basketball. So I hate that now we just go to this level of respect where we're not even going to try to score because we don't want to hurt your feelings anymore. I just don't in general believe in something called running up the score unless you're talking about a youth level where you get a team that's 40, 50, 60 points better and they're still pressing and stuff. That's different. You're trying to humiliate people, humiliate kids. At the pro level, I just don't think there is such a thing. Just learn how to stop what they're doing to you.
Let me give you a quick fair or foul then. And this is completely separate now of this incident, although it's somewhat connected. I was talking about padding stats or, getting some extra points here or there or something for players. Because we're seeing all these crazy performances. By the way, 5 50-point games this year, 3 of them against the Pacers. If you're a bucket getter, you're not missing the Pacers game. If you're a bucket getter, man, I'm telling you, you are not load managing against the Pacers because that's an opportunity to bump those numbers up. And speaking of which, Embiid last night goes for 41 points in a blowout win against the Detroit Pistons. He was questionable, by the way, coming in. Surprise, surprise. He saw Detroit. He's like, I'm not questionable anymore. But Embiid has missed 3 games this year at Minnesota. Well, that's a really good defensive front court. That's a tough place to play. That's a tough game. They got good defenders. At New Orleans, at Boston. I've watched Embiid long enough to know this is how it works. I mean, he's only played in Denver, I think, 1 time in his entire career. You see a pattern with this. And so fair or foul for me saying, at New Orleans, at Minnesota, at Boston, out. 3 games against Washington, in. 2 games against Detroit, in. 2 games against the Pacers, in. I just look at this and I go, I don't know, man. I'm impressed with the numbers. These guys are incredible players. But some of these numbers, 35 a game, I look at it and go, yeah, you cut out the games where you're only going to get 20, a hard 20, and you inflate the games where you're going to get an easy 40.
Yeah, look, I think that's a fair point, man. It's a pretty good observation because typically it works the other way. You're looking for a night off for a guy, right? You pick one of those teams that you think, we're going to have enough anyway to win these games. You play Washington, you play Detroit, you play San Antonio. We're going to have enough anyway. And if you happen to lose those games, and whatever, it is what it is, you live with it. It's the other games typically that those guys don't want to miss. And even if the organization had other ideas, the player is going to have a little bit of say in that. Right? No, man, I'm not missing that, whatever. So I think I'm kind of in the middle on this, man. I think I need more evidence of this, okay? So I'm going to be watching this trend over the next 20 games.
Just see the games you missed. Be like,
right. See if there's any more nights that he gets off conspicuously against top teams and maybe some front court size.
Big impressive win over Washington. They won by 45 points, Legs. They won by 45 points. But like you said, he weren't needed for that game, but there he is putting up a 50-piece.
By the way, nobody's playing better than him right now in the NBA.
Yeah.
And Embiid's been unbelievable.
Yeah, again, with some impressive wins. Washington twice, Detroit. I mean, these are big-time wins, man. He's filling it up over there. I told you I could be a little hater on this stuff. This stuff bothers me. It bothers me.
Jeffrey drank some haterade this morning. There's no doubt about it.
I definitely did. All right. I asked you to wrap up today. So I asked you, we're talking about Petty. Did you have, is there another story you have about Petty in your career where you remember?
Yep. I'll give you two quick ones. One, this is actually a personal story of my senior year in high school. I'm going for the school scoring record.
Oh, I love it.
We are playing our arch rival. It just happened, and they're 3 miles across. I mean, this is in West End of Richmond. They're 3 miles from us. Arch rival in every sport.
Richmond, Virginia. This is a hoops bit.
Yeah. And even back then, it was very under recruited at the time. And AAU kind of now there's a lot of kids every year that come out. In fact, there's a school there now that's in the top 15 in the country, John Marshall. That's a hotbed of hoops. We're playing our arch rival, going for the school scoring record. And they come out and they go 4-corner stall against us. Okay? Now, and I think their intent, and it was at home, by the way, it was in our gym. Their intent was, of course, our student section and our crowds, you're laying in. It's a packed house, standing room only because they were hyping up this game. It was because it was leading into this was going to be the night that I was going to break this record. And they go to 4-corner stall, but unfortunately for them, they weren't very good, and their guards turned the ball over a few times, so we get a lead. And at some point, you got to start playing, man, if you want to try to win a game. Then they started to have to play, and ended up we beat them, and I got the record that night. But here's the other one I want to bring out, and I got into a little back and forth over this a few years ago. It was the Knicks and Memphis. It was in New York. Jay Crowder was playing for Memphis. Memphis was up 16 points with about 40 seconds left in the game, and they scored to go up 16. The Knicks whoever took the ball out of bounds, I don't remember who it was now, the player took the ball out of bounds and basically without looking, casually kind of flipped it in to the point guard for the Knicks, who I think was Elfrid Payton, who's going to take the ball up the floor, and they're probably going to get a shot off, and then the game's going to end because the Memphis will hold the ball, right? Kind of just natural the way games end like that. Right. Jay Crowder kind of is looking the entire time. He's lurking in the backcourt. And as they flip it in, he runs up and steals the ball, dribbles to the corner, and shoots a 3. Up 16 with 40 seconds to go. And you remember this? Elfrid Payton drills him right through his chest with 2 hands and knocks him into the crowd.
I don't remember this.
It started a fight on the court. And I don't remember the fallout. I'm sure if Payton got ejected, he probably got suspended. But you can look it up. You can find this on YouTube. Elfrid Payton shoves Jay Crowder. It pops right up. I thought, and I said that. I said, come on, man. And here's what I'll tell you. I don't believe in running up the score. But what I do believe in, if the other team is clearly unprepared for something like that, you know what I mean? And you're taking advantage of that when you're already up 16, that's different to me. That's going outside of, like I said, what is the normal protocol. That's why I had such a problem with Patrick Beverley the year he dove into Russell Westbrook and hurt his knee.
Oh, and took him out. Right.
Everybody in the gym knew, because Billy Donovan is signaling timeout, timeout. Westbrook's bringing the ball up the floor. He's dribbling at an angle toward the sideline. Everybody knows he's going to step over half court. He's going to put the ball on his hip, and he's going to call timeout, right? And what happens? He does that. He relaxes. Patrick Beverley dives at the ball, dives right on his knee, tears cartilage in his knee, affects Oklahoma City's entire postseason because you did it to an unaware player, and it's outside of what normal protocol is. And then people that defended that were like, oh, play through the whistle. What are you talking about? Right, come on, man. No. Yeah. And that's kind of what I felt like Jay Crowder did in that situation. Like, this team is completely unsuspecting that you're in backcourt for some reason. You know what I mean? And then to top it off, he didn't just steal it and then just dribble out and dribble the clock out. He went right to the corner and shot it for 3 and got absolutely drilled by Elfrid Payton, and started like a pretty good little scrum there in the corner in the front row of Madison Square Garden.
I love that one. Do you remember a couple years back, this must have been 6 years ago, Jamal Murray had 48 points against the Celtics. It was his career high. He had never had a 50-piece. And 10 seconds left, he dribbles up, Nuggets up enough that you don't need a bucket or you don't need to do anything. He dribbles up and takes a three because he wants to get 50. And he missed it. Kyrie Irving grabbed the ball and kicked it into the stands. I don't know if you remember this.
But don't remember that. Yeah.
He drop kicked the ball all the way into the stands, and afterwards that's his thing too. Like, you take that shot, you don't get the game ball. Hope somebody take the game ball home. I thought it was, at that time, I'm speaking out of both sides of my house, because by that time I was like, how dare Kyrie Irving act like this?
Right, of course. Wait, hey, I got one more too. Just popped in my head.
Okay,
another great one. This is the Orlando Magic are playing, I want to say, the Pistons, or whoever Doug Collins was coaching at the time, maybe Washington. Anthony Bowie is playing for the Orlando Magic. Okay, he's 1 assist shy of a triple double. So, and they're up. Game's pretty much over. They call timeout. They're trying to set up a play to get Anthony Bowie an assist, and Doug Collins is coaching the other team. He's so irate over what they've done. He tells his team, you know what? If they want it that bad, let him have it. And he basically tells his entire team to stand over in front of the bench. and I remember the ball was being taken out around half court. And Anthony Bowie takes it out, and he throws like a baseball pass under the basket to somebody, and they catch it and lay it in, because there was only like a second or two left in the game. And they catch it, lay it in. He gets his 10th assist, and Doug Collins like, yeah, good. And he storms off the court. Yeah, you want it that bad? Here, we're going to give it to you. So that was like another one, kind of this end of the game. Anytime you're talking about something done merely for a statistical accomplishment, it's going to lead to like conversations like this, right?
You know what? I changed my mind, Legs. I'm on the other side now. I'm all for it. I like these stupid things. It's like baseball has unwritten rules. You can't look at the pitcher after a home run. You can't flip the bat. Like these dumb things, and I think it's so dumb. So I'm with you. No more unwritten rules. Do whatever you want. End of game, take a three, take a dunk, whatever. It doesn't matter. Play to the final whistle. That does it for today, guys. Good show. Legs is off tomorrow. Going to enjoy a little vacation time, but we do have Mark Campbell, who is an NBA trainer. He's a personal trainer. He works out with several guys. He's had Malik Beasley. He's had Domantas Sabonis. So we're going to talk a little bit NBA training. Should be a fun one. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Legs, enjoy your time off.
All right. You got it, Adam. Talk to you soon.
We all silly like the mayor.